Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Distributed Generation and Smart Grid lecture series. Here today we are going to discuss about challenges and disadvantages of microgrid development. In spite of potential benefits, development of microgrid suffers from several challenges and potential drawbacks. So these things we are going to discuss today. First one is the high cost of distributed energy resources. As we all know that when you are planning to implement or install a microgrid based upon any kind of distributed energy resource like a solar or wind, the initial investment is very high. That is why the most of the common people or customer step back to install such kind of a distributed energy resources or solar based system in our domestic purpose or industrial purposes. The initial investment is very high. So the high installation cost for microgrid is a great disadvantage. This can be reduced by arranging some form of subsidies from government bodies to encourage the investment. So nowadays, we know that in our Kerala power system or Indian power system, the authorities like Ministry of New and Renewable Energy systems and they are providing lot of subsidies and encouragement in this area. So that is the one of the point that we can put forward to increase the penetration of such a kind of distributed energy resources, because the initial investment is very high. So this should be done at least for a transitory period for meeting up environmental and carbon capture goals. We set such kind of goals in a global way. There is a global target set to enhance renewable green power generation to 20% by 2020 and to reduce carbon emission by 50% by 2050. So when we are setting such type of goals, we should encourage the green power generation in any possible manner. So that is why the subsidies given by government is the important thing in this area, because that will attract more customers to install distributed energy resources based power system. The second one is that technical difficulties. Technical difficulties. So these are related to the lack of technical experience in controlling a large number of plug and play microsources. So as you all know that in a microgrid system, there will be more than one microsources. That there will be more than one type of distributed energy resources. So still now there is a lack of technical experience in controlling in the large number of microsources that is integrated to form a microgrid. So this aspect requires an extensive real-time and offline research on management, protection and control aspects of microgrid, and also on the choice of the distributed energy resources, its sizing and placement of the microsources. So specific telecommunication infrastructure and communication protocols must be developed in this area, because in our distributed energy resources are integrated to form a microgrid is utilizing lot of power electronic type converters. If we are generating from solar, we need to use a DC to DC converter and a DC to AC conversion. So many converters are using. So the control and protection is very important aspect when you are implementing a microgrid by integrating these type of different kinds of distributed energy resources. And the communication between between these distributed energy resources are required for the coordinated control of the microgrid. So we discussed in our earlier lectures, in that we have microsource controllers and central controllers. Central controllers receives the control commands from these different microsource controllers. So that coordinate control requires the communication facility also. So specific telecommunication infrastructure and communication protocol must be developed in this area. So actually research is going on for implementation and rollout of standards like IEEE 61850 in communication for microgrid and active distribution networks. However, lack of proper communication infrastructure in rural areas is a potential drawback in the implementation of rural microgrid. So, as we all know, this is one of the advantages of a microgrid is that we can set up a power system in rural areas where conventional grid is not available. You can set up a microgrid, but in that case also there is a one drawback. There will be communication deficiency. The communication infrastructure will not be available in a rural areas. So in case of rural areas, the implementation of rural microgrid become very difficult because of the lack of proper communication infrastructure there. And besides economic implementation of seamless switching between the different operating modes like grid connected mode to standalone mode is still a major challenge, since the available solution for reclosing adaptive protection with a synchronism check are quite expensive nowadays. Synchronization and protective equipments are still expensive. So by ensuring the protection, the seamless switching between grid connected mode to the islanded mode or islanded mode to the grid connected mode of a microgrid is still a challenge. So these are the technical difficulties exist in this area. Then third one is absence of standards. We know the standards are available for in any electrical system design. Even if you are in a conventional power system, you have standards in power quality standards. So we need to maintain this much power quality, and each and every equipments or different kinds of power quality issues. Such kind of categorization and standards are available in the conventional grid, but here in the microgrid still not a general standards are not available. Since microgrid is a comparatively new area and standards are not yet available for addressing the operation and protection issues. That is a problem. Power quality data for different types of sources, standards and protocols for integration of microgrid and their participation in the conventional and deregulated power markets, safety and protection guidelines, etc. should be laid down. Actually, there are microgrid means mostly the consumers are interested into participate in the market also. That is, whatever the distributed energy resources producing the energy, the surplus energy they need to sell in the power market also. So how to integrate such kind of surplus power and sell in the market, such kind of standards are still not yet developed. So even standards like G59 bar A and IEEE 1547 are available, but they should be reassessed and restructured for successful implementation of microgrid and active distribution network. So the important thing is we need to restructure the available standards to suit our existing microgrid. So availability of standards is also one of the challenge existing in this area. Then administrative and legal barriers. So in most of the countries, no standard legislation and regulations are available to regulate the operation of the microgrid. Okay, so if one consumer required planning to construct a microgrid or implement a microgrid, and the proper administrative channel is not there to come across the various procedures. So even there are no standard legislation and regulations are available to regulate the operation of the microgrid also. Once if you are implemented a microgrid, its operation also is difficult because such kind of rules are not yet formulated. So government of some countries are encouraging the establishment of green power microgrid, but standard regulations are yet to be framed up for implementation in future. So that kind of barriers, legal barriers are there exist in case of a microgrid development. Then the last one is a market monopoly. So if the microgrids are, suppose the microgrid is allowed to supply energy autonomously to priority loads during any main grid contingency. Suppose if there is a in your power system, microgrid is connected to the main grid, and if any contingency occurs in your main grid, if the microgrid is continued to be in operation to feed the priority loads, then the problem arises is who will fix the energy price. So the main question that arises is who will then control energy supply prices during the period over which main grid is not available. So the problem is that market monopoly comes into the picture, because suppose main grid is the power generation from your microgrid is takes more percentage than your conventional grid. Suppose the scenario is like that, and then the microgrid is mostly will be a generation from private parties, so they will fix the energy prices, so that will lead to market monopoly. Okay, nowadays the generation from the renewable energy based power system, such kind of microgrid in our Indian scenario is very less in percentage, but suppose the case comes 50-50 sharing, or more than 50% is based on this kind of microgrid or distributed generation, means that they will fix energy prices, they will control the market, as the case in our fuels, for petrol price or diesel prices, like that they will fix the energy prices also. So since the main grid will be disconnected, and the current electricity market will lose its control on the energy price also. That is, if any contingency in the main grid, means the only power supplier, microgrid is the only power supplier in the power system then exists. So then the main grid will lose entire control over the energy price. So so that is a one problem. When a microgrid is connected to the main grid, and main grid is out of or main grid is faulty due to some grid contingency, then microgrid will decide the energy price, and main grid will lose their control over the energy price and power flow. So that will lead to market monopoly. So microgrid, at that case, microgrid might retail energy at very high price, exploiting the market monopoly. So that is the point. Microgrid might retail energy at a very high price, because they will exploiting the monopoly status. So thus suitable market infrastructure need to be designed and implemented for sustaining development of microgrid. So that is very important in case of a microgrid development. Suitable market infrastructure needs to be designed and implemented for sustainable development of microgrid. So these are the few points and important points that are now exist as challenges or disadvantages of a microgrid development.